First of all, thank you all so much for joining. And I know that we had a ton of notes from different SRNAs who, it's the middle of the day, had class. And so we will be recording this and sharing this with all of the registrants as well, because each of you brings so much value on what it looks like to work in your different clinical settings, and a lot about culture you can't read, on paper, right? You really need to hear firsthand. And so with that, we're going to go to just a few different questions for the CRNA panel, specifically around, what was your journey like? So let's kick it off first on, as you thought about even just financial planning for CRNA school. Again, tuition's expensive. It's a big leap of faith to go from being an ICU nurse into becoming a full-time CRNA. And so for each of you, how did you think about planning for that next chapter, and, what shaped your decision process? Who wants to kick it off? Kimberly, Amanda?
Yeah, I don't mind. Hey, this is Amanda. So I actually have 4 children. So I started school in 2021, graduated in 2024. So a huge piece of my financial planning revolved around getting my family set up for 3+ years of no money coming in on my side. So it was all on my husband. So with financial kind of, forecasting about like what the 3 years would look like, obviously student loans. I mean, I had to take out, student loans for school, paid for what I could pay for as I went on. And prior to that was just working overtime. I know this is like a tale as old as time, but working extra when I could. And I worked through like the brunt of COVID. So time was like, it was there. I mean, they needed you all the time, 24 hours a day. So I picked up some extra without, trying to get super burnt out, and still try to spend, quality time with my family. So definitely like saving, being really smart with like investments. And then a big piece was making sure that we had private insurance for the 3 years, because when you're a student, you can usually go through your school and get student insurance. But I would definitely, for those of you that are looking at school or currently going through school, just make sure that you have some emergency funds built up, have access if you need like personal loans. I would have those conversations ahead of time with the appropriate financial institutions, and save as much money as you can, and be really smart with your spending, and just go back to your undergrad and live on ramen noodles and like the little 99-cent Mr. Pizzas, if you have to, which is what I did in my dorm room, 20 something years ago. But yeah, I think that, being really smart with your money and just trying to save it as much as you really want to go buy something or go to a concert. Just, it's temporary and it'll get better. Yeah.
Totally. I think it's so true. You have to like transport yourself back to a time where,
Yeah.
budgeting looks a little different.
Right.
And Kimberly, what about you? What was that journey like?
I was very similar in the way of I worked during the brunt of COVID. So I was able to work a lot of overtime and save up all my money in that way. And I took out student loans as well, and graduate student plus loans. So I definitely came out of CRNA school a little worried, like, how am I going to pay off all my student loans? But I felt like when I went to all the conventions when I was an SRNA, there was always meetings on financial guidance, and there's financial advisors that go there. And my teachers were very helpful in terms of having financial advisors come to our program and discuss the situation with us. So I kind of, once I was looking into school and getting closer to graduating, I contacted a financial advisor, and they contacted me with someone specific towards student loans and how to kind of consolidate it and make a plan like that. So I highly recommended doing that process as well, because I just felt like I was coming out of school, haven't had a paycheck in 3 years, wanted to spend all my paycheck and treat myself, but wanted to be financially responsible as well. Moving to a brand new city, so I felt like very similar in the way of I needed definitely guidance, and I felt like a financial advisor was very nice to have during that journey and everything.
Yeah, no, such a good point. Also, I see Emily just popped on from the St. Al's team. And so, Emily, if you don't mind just quickly introducing yourself, we just began some of the questions around the CRNA journey. So I'll have you first introduce yourself. Can you hear us? Yeah, I think you're on mute. One sec.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries. Go ahead.
I'm
Yeah.
having technical difficulties.
Okay.
What would you like to know?
Yeah, no. Look, would love to hear just quickly a little bit about yourself. Like what motivated you to, one, go through the CRNA school journey, and then second, where are you now in that, phase
So
one?
my name is Emily Van Dyke. I'm a CRNA out in Boise, Idaho. I work at St. Alphonsus. I love the outdoors, is why I live out here in Boise. I originally grew up in North Carolina, but I've become a pretty big skier. And so I was an ICU nurse in Salt Lake City, and I worked in the pediatric ICU there. I loved it, and I loved critical care. But the emotional side of it, just I knew I couldn't do that indefinitely. I just saw like what was happening to people 10 years ahead of me, 20 years ahead of me, and I didn't want to go into management. So graduate school and CRNA just seemed like a great path. And it's kind of ICU on steroids, which I love. And that's my CRNA journey. I'm post night shift. I was in the ICU this morning. I'm sorry. Like,
Oh my
I
God,
work
no,
a lot
trust
of
me.
nights now so I can vacation.
Yeah, someone had to take one for the team. So
Yeah.
I'm sure Mike and the team appreciate that for sure. And then last piece there was, as you thought about financial planning for CRNA school, like what did that look like? Because I really
Yes.
gotta think through.
So I originally had a psych degree undergrad, and then I was in the Peace Corps, and then I got into nursing. And so I knew from that experience just how expensive school could be. And I made sure I went to school in North Carolina. I really wanted to go to Duke, wanted to go to the fancy school, but their program was, $80,000 compared to the state school that was like 14. And so I was like, all right, well, that makes a lot more sense. And I just took that same path with CRNA school. So I kept my residency in North Carolina and made sure I had the lowest tuition that I could. I still have loans now, but I'm happy that they're not as big as my friends that did go to those private schools. Not that they're not great, but tuition can really vary depending on where you go to school.
Yeah, you could not be more spot on. You look at the spectrum of what costs range like, and I think that obviously ends up influencing your decision, even if you find a school you really love and a community you want to be part of. Sometimes the sticker price is enough to kind of change that for you. Now, for each of you, would love to understand, as you thought about just decisions around why to join your current employer, what really drove that decision? Amanda, do you want to kick us off again? Oh, I think she might have just popped out. So Kim, do you mind kicking us off?
Of course. So as I mentioned earlier, it was kind of nerve-wracking for me to pick a hospital that I've never done clinical at before. I was born and raised in Long Island, and I just assumed I was going to start to work back at the same hospital I worked at in the ICU. And then a couple of New York hospitals in New York City came down to my school and kind of started promoting it. And then I started talking to a lot of I feel like the anesthesia world is very small. And all my teachers knew someone who worked in New York, and it was kind of like a word of mouth situation. And one thing that I kept hearing over and over and over again, though, throughout that journey was, you have to work at Sloan. Everybody there is so nice. It is such an amazing environment. And I just kept hearing that, even from people that were earning CRNAs that used to live in New York that now moved down to Florida, because everyone from New York eventually ends up in Florida somehow. And they kept saying, like, everyone there is so nice. You have to give it a shot. And even one of my clinical coordinators, who I highly looked up to, she went to school in Columbia, and she said by far it was her favorite site to work at and be a student there. So I went on a couple of interviews throughout New York City, and I also met with our chief, who I thought from day one was just amazing, and she told me exactly what to expect working as a CRNA at Sloan. And I mean, I love everything about our chief. I think she's so amazing and understanding. And I go to her office all the time to like for advice. And she's great. And I really feel like she helped make that decision also. And it was kind of just like a feeling I got. I mean, the one thing I will say about Sloan is that I made a list of priorities of what I really wanted in a hospital facility. And one of my major decisions was autonomy, which I kept hearing that Sloan had. You, as a CRNA, you do a lot of the big cases. And I was always nervous going to New York, where it's a highly populated residency programs, that a lot of the residents would take over the big cases. And that as a CRNA, I would be only doing endo or like the very easy cases. And that's something I didn't want to have happen to me. And I wanted to do a range of adult and pediatrics. And that's kind of how I ended up working at Sloan, is because they do have both pediatrics and adults. And there's very minimal amount of residents that work there. So all the CRNAs do a lot of all the big cases, thoracic, neuro, spine, everything. And that's what I really loved about it. And the attendings are amazing. They give you your full autonomy. They trust you. They don't look down on you. You really work as a team together. And I mean, I love everything about Sloan. So I'm like, I'm going to be a lifer here. And I never saw myself ever living in New York City. I grew up in Long Island. And now I'm like, I can't leave Sloan. I love it so much. So I'm very happy with my decision here.
That's so awesome. I see Sade just smiling, brimming ear to ear. Yeah, what a special journey. And it's clear that like having a great chief matters a whole lot too, right? And you know, that's certainly the case at MSK. All right, Amanda, would you like to go next? Just like, what were the driving factors that came into why Novant and
Yeah.
that spot?
Most definitely. So, Novant, specifically in the greater Winston market, I work at Novant Forsyth, and I worked there for a little over 8 years, went straight to the ICU as a new grad, RN, just felt immediately like a sense of family, a lot of support, even as an ICU nurse. And, then as I was thinking about CRNA school and meeting a lot of CRNAs in the ICU, of course, we do a lot of cases and they go to the ICU quite often as CRNAs. So I really got to talk to them, and they were always so welcoming. They're like, please come and shadow us, because we had to have shadow experience prior to application to school. And they would give me their phone number, and they like, please ask questions. Like, we'll help you, like, learn about some bigger cases and things we do, as a CRNA, to make sure you actually really like it, before you start applying to school. And so, of course, when I was in school, I felt really pretty certain that I would come back to Novant as a CRNA, specifically for Forsyth Medical Center. So for me, just actually getting the chance to do clinicals there, we have a huge variety of cases. Just kind of piggybacking off what the other CRNA said, we don't have residents there that are taking our cases. Our docs don't sit cases. So we have a lot of autonomy, and we're doing cardiothoracic, neuro, peds. We have a whole, like, out of OR, I think we staff like 19 or 20 satellite out of OR places just in our one hospital. And then we also have more facilities in our greater Winston market. So it's really nice. You get to see a lot of a variety of cases. So for me, it was being new to practice. What am I going to have experience in? Am I going to be, pretty well-rounded if I wanted to eventually, get into something else, or down the road, if I wanted to specialize in peds or open hearts? Was I going to have that opportunity coming into Novant Health? And the answer for me was yes. And so I felt like, if I can just keep my head down and ask the right questions and learn from all the right people that have been so willing to take me under their wing and mentor me as a new grad, they're always there for me to ask questions too. I absolutely love like the team collaboration. Like, our anesthesiologists work, I mean, we're very much like a team approach. They pre-op our patients. I also pre-op my own patients. And then we have conversations together and come up with a plan. And usually, it's your plan's like, all right, whatever, sounds great. Sounds like you've thought about it, very personalized care. So that was all a huge piece, into me coming out into practice, and things that I look for. I had a lot of like non-negotiables, like, what are my hours going to look like? Of course, you know, you think about the pay. But I had several choices in my area that are really big hospitals, one a major teaching facility, that's attached to a school of medicine, and a couple other options. And for me, it just felt like I started at Novant Health and I had such a great experience as an ICU nurse and a new grad there. Why not come full circle and return as a new grad CRNA and learn from what I feel like are some of the very best. So that was all very big factors for me, for sure.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, to now get to see it wearing a different hat, but to know that at least the culture has been vetted, right? It really
Yeah.
is a special home. I think that's just an amazing journey. And you know, I know Novant has also invested in helping their ICU nurses now think about pathways to get to CRNA school, and so has been ahead of the curve as far as really investing in you know, that lifelong journey with their talent, which is amazing. And then Emily, would love to get your take as well. Just, you know, most important factors when you decided to join St. Al's. And, you know, I know you talked about the skiing and some of the things that also made you move, you know, coast to coast, but any other color there? Yeah, you just got right off mute. Yeah. Perfect. You got it. Yep.
Sorry.
No, you're great.
It is so nice to hear you guys talk about your lovely hospitals. And I remember hospitals on the East Coast. And I have to say that is not, I did nursing clinicals at Forsyth. I loved it. It's my favorite OB unit I've ever worked in. Um, and then now I find myself here in Idaho and things are run differently for sure. But I was all about location. I had lived in Utah. I worked as an ICU nurse there. I got used to being able to go ski post shift. I wanted to hike. Like there's just so much to do outside the hospital, and that's what drives me. And so I lived in Asheville, where I went to Western Carolina. So I had the option of those, you know, million great places. I could have gone back to Durham. But I wanted a season ski pass again. It's really what it came down to. And Utah is not CRNA friendly. So then you're looking at Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and Boise seemed like a cool place. My brother had moved to Idaho. So like I had visited here less than 48 hours. Like, I'm gonna try this out. There are two big hospitals here and that's it. So it's just like this is the only game in town, and one of them does trauma and one doesn't. And so I picked St. Alphonsus because I wanted to do trauma. It's smaller, which I really like. It is really collaborative. The docs are very hands off. I could go an entire shift and not see them, or, you know, depending on what's going on, they, you know, might be working with them really closely. So I like that. We get everything, but it's very different than being at anywhere on the East Coast that's like I know the two hospitals you guys are talking about, and that is definitely not here. But the benefit is that you get off work and you can go hiking, and on your day off you go skiing, and we have all kinds of different shifts because we're such a smaller group. Which is great. And there's a lot of change right now, honestly, but I think it's all good things that are happening. I plan to continue to stay here. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think another hidden gem about St. Alphonsus is being part of the larger Trinity health system as well, where there are so many different hospitals across the US. My husband's actually a surgeon at one of the Trinity ministries. And, you know, he always says, he's like, no matter where we live, like there is a hub across the US, which I think is pretty special as they think about their broader community as well. So awesome. Um, Last one here is obviously, as we thought about your financial journey, a lot of what each of your employers are doing is something new, again, ahead of the curve, right? Which is helping invest in the next generation of talent because there are real shortages. And the truth is, these shortages come from people hesitating to go back to school because of the costs. And so, you know, Emily, as you think about even the choices you made between going to a private school versus a lower cost school, like how would your journey might have been different had that type of financial support existed? Just a second. I know I like put you right on mute and then right back to it. Maybe in the meantime, Amanda, do you want to go first and then Emily, you
I
let us
got it.
know?
I got it.
Got it? Okay,
I'm
perfect.
really
Go for
sorry.
it.
I'm sorry. I
No,
wish
you're
I was on
totally
my
good.
computer.
Go for it.
I don't think my choices would have changed because I think student loans are terrible. Who wants to pay them? You get out of school and you die. I think I'm working for you guys now. I hate paying student loans.
Yes.
So I think I still would have made the choice and known that they were going to get reimbursed really fast with the loan
Yes.
reimbursement. This is something we've been pushing for at my hospital. I started there as a new grad. We did not have any option. We were run by a private group. They didn't understand what I was even talking about. They didn't understand I'd been to school for 3 years and what these loans were. And so this is a huge thing now that we're hospital employees that we're trying to promote this. And I think it's great for anybody, regardless of what their loans are.
Yes, I could not agree more, especially from a mission perspective. Who wants to go next? Amanda?
Sure.
Okay.
So the question is if I'd had access to the
Yeah.
90,000? Yeah.
Yes.
So that's pretty close to what my loans are. I went to UNCG. Emily would know it as, used to be called the Raleigh School of Nurse Anesthesia, but we're still based in the Raleigh area. I probably would have went to school a little sooner because I felt like I just, I had a few more kids, did my RN to BSN online, paid for that. I feel like I would have tried to get into school sooner if I felt like I had the support financially from, my organization potentially. If I had had this option, I would have probably tried sooner if I would have felt like I'm going to put my family into 6 figures in debt and I have 4 kids. So I definitely feel like that would have been fantastic to have had access to. I would not have changed my school because one of the reasons I applied and went to where I went was because of our vast access to multiple clinical sites. They have 31 clinical sites across the state, and then they have a couple contracts with some western part CRNA only ran facilities, which is kind of nice. But other than that, I probably would have just went sooner. And I feel like this is a huge recruitment tool, like you mentioned. I think that Novant is looking into and like starting to offer now with the ICU nurses. So I definitely feel like it's fantastic. Take advantage and help fix the shortage for sure of anesthesia providers. Yeah, competent anesthesia providers. Yeah.
Which,
Right.
absolutely. And and first of all, the going sooner is half the battle with these shortages. It's getting people to take
Most
that
definitely. Yeah.
as quickly as possible instead of
Yeah.
hesitating because of the cost. So could
Right.
not agree more.
Yeah.
Kimberly, we'll have you wrap this section, and then I see a few questions in the chat from a few of the students, but how would it have maybe impacted your journey or shifted it a bit had you had this access? Yeah.
So the reason why I chose Barry down in Florida was because of from a financial standpoint. So I already had undergraduate student loans from my previous bachelor's degree, and I was like, I cannot take on another chunk of student loans. So I went down the entire East Coast worth of schools. I made myself an Excel spreadsheet, and I pretty much narrowed my first way to narrow down a school was based off of the financial options. So and any school that was too expensive, I was like, as interested as and as good as a program as you may be, I don't want to take on another financial chunk like that. So I'm very happy with the school I went to. It was amazing, and I don't regret going to my school. I think it was like an amazing, both academically, and we had great clinical experience. But had I known that a program like this existed, I probably would have went somewhere closer to home, like Columbia, been a lot closer with my family. Because 3 years of a commitment of being away from your family and friends is a really big commitment. And I think that's what deters people from going to school too. And they want to just apply to the tri-state area so they could still be living at home with their parents because they can't afford housing and school at the same time. But the tri-state area was also very competitive for me because there was really only Columbia and Rutgers. There wasn't really many options. And you live in New York City where there's so many applicants that are applying and the competition just significantly increases. So had I known that a program like this existed, it probably would have affected my decision. Absolutely.
It's such a good point. I mean, there's only what, 137 CRNA schools, right? And so there's no guarantee you have one like right in your neck of the woods. And so, yeah, there are definitely some life changes that have to go into it too. And I think that's a great point. I see a few questions in the chat. First one was, do you think there'll be more sites added and opportunities added to this, specifically, in the Midwest region? And we'll flag, we already have partnerships with organizations like Northwestern in the Chicago region. We have a new partnership with a group in Ohio coming live. So there are, but noted on Minnesota being a focus. And then obviously each of these employers have built, amazing experiences, frankly, in like very cool cities, right? I think we can all say New York, North Carolina, Boise, these are like parts of the country many of us would want to live. And then are there any specific deadlines or cutoff dates? Any student who's graduating in 2025, 2026, or 2027 is eligible, but it is on a rolling acceptance basis. So the sooner you get your app in, the higher your likelihood of getting accepted. And then lastly, are there any clinical placement or mentorship opportunities? I'm going to actually open it up to those on the call on the recruiting side to just share what that looks like for Novant versus St. Al's versus MSK. So who would like to kick us off? Okay, Colleen. Yeah, go ahead, Colleen.
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. So for a lot of our SRNAs that are graduating, we do kind of through the process, you do interview and speak with our leaders and the team. There's shadowing opportunities, there's chances to ask a whole bunch of different questions. And if they do want to extend you an offer, and you are finishing up your clinical rotations, we are able to partner with schools for you to finish out and do clinical rotations with us. So we have some people that accepted offers that are actually graduating in August this year. They accepted offers in October and they're finishing out their rotations with us. So they kind of are kind of used to the culture and getting to know everybody a little better, and then that transition's a little easier. So it is potentially an opportunity. There's a lot of legalities with the schools and things like that working on the back end, but that's something that our team would certainly consider.
Thanks. Mike, Sade, anything else you'd add on?
Similar. We do have opportunities as well as MSK. There's certain schools that we've partnered with to be able to rotate through us. And again, you can always reach out to me as well if you have any additional questions. But yeah, same with us.
Perfect. Mike?
Sure. So Emily mentioned that we're going through a lot of change. Right now, we're building out our own internal anesthesia team. So we're moving away from an outside group that's currently providing some of the services for us. So with that transition, we don't really have the opportunity to provide clinical rotations right now. However, if you did come out, have what we call a site visit, right? Get a tour, meet everybody on the team, etc. If shadowing was something that you were really interested in, we could certainly, make that happen so you can kind of see the flow of everything within the hospital. But as far as a true clinical rotation at this time, we're not quite there yet. So.
And Tess, I'm sorry, can I just also add, part of our interview process as well is also to be able to come on site and shadow and ask any questions. You'd be able to interact with other CRNAs, ask them what a day in the life is. And one thing I also just want to say is I've interacted several times with the leadership here for CRNAs, and I can tell you that they're amazing. They're very supportive. They're very well respected in the community and very knowledgeable as well. So.
I want to call it, Emily had one more thing to add. Sorry, Sade.
Go ahead.
So within the past year, we started getting OHSU students. And then now Idaho State is starting a program, so we're getting students with that. And so there has been mention, I've heard this before, even from ICU nurses that have shadowed me and then gone away to school because previously Idaho has not had a program. So that's something I could see coming in the next year or two. We are rebuilding. That is the truth. But Boise is great and our chief is great and things are really good if you love the outdoors.
Very jealous as someone who lives in the Midwest and deals with the flat terrain. We are looking at vacations in the Idaho region because it's just so stunning as a part of the country. There's no doubt about that for sure. Awesome. Well, if we want to skip to the next piece, just quickly on how does this work, we'll get to that, and then we'll wrap with just a little bit of advice from each SRNA as far as the actual clinical setting. So if we go to the next slide here. The next piece is really, first of all, what are the actual benefits, right? We all talk about student loans from a tuition perspective, but this is really about each of these employers helping step up to make sure that the individuals who get this support are protected, right? There's no impact to their salary or other benefits, right? Every dollar paid is theirs to keep. But the other benefits are that, student loans obviously have certain provisions that may have certain tax advantages tied to them. We at CLASP actually build in a ton of financial wellness tools, whether that's helping with budgeting or how you stay eligible for public student loan forgiveness. And the payments are made directly to the student loan provider. So it doesn't matter if you took a federal loan or a private loan, these healthcare systems are really giving you flexibility. And so again, just a really valuable tool to impact you not only from a dollar perspective, but a whole financial wellness perspective. So with that, let's get right to what the typical day in the life looks like as our final key piece. So who would like to start? Emily, I see you off mute. It would be great to understand. Talk to us about, what does your scope of clinical practice look like? What, you mentioned autonomy earlier. You're like, I get a ton of autonomy in the clinical setting. What is that? And what kind of procedures are you working on these days?
I apologize about the mute thing. I couldn't get my laptop to work. I'm on my cell phone and I don't know, my fat thumb can't do it. So you can mute me after this. I won't talk anymore. Um, depending on what type of shift I'm working, it looks really different. And that's something we have now. Like we have a true no call Monday through Friday, 7 to 3, 7 to 5. And that's your typical, there's bread and butter, there's neuro cases, there's vascular, there's endo, there's EP. That's what you've seen at all your clinicals kind of setting. And that we also even have a day surgery you can go to. So, and the docs pre-op, they come in for induction. Maybe they come in, maybe they don't. Maybe you talk about it, maybe you don't, kind of depending on what your situation is with them. And I think when I say autonomy, that's what it is. Like a lot of times I've been there for 4 years now, so that's also different. I came as a new grad, we used to talk more, but now like we barely chat. If they need to tell me, hey, grab a McGrath, do this, do that, they'll let me know. Hey, you might want to drip for this, heads up on this. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're like, when you're ready for your coffee break, Em, and there's been no discussion because they know I've looked, they've looked. It's really straightforward. We don't even have to have that now. And that to me is a cool thing about being kind of at a smaller hospital and being here for so long and building my practice with them. So that's kind of your Monday through Friday. I also do cover our OB team. And when I do that, we have 24-hour shifts and I'm completely autonomous there. I'm doing all my own pre-ops, post-ops, epidurals, spinals, C-sections. We post-op our patients. There is a doc covering. And so if I go into the OR, I let them know. They may or may not come down, get involved, but if I need help, they absolutely are there. So I love that because it's like I get the complete freedom, but if I mess up, I'm calling them and they help me. No one ever gives me any slack. Like it's great. It's wonderful. And then the other thing I often do, which is what I've done now, is I'll work weekend nights. And this is again because I'm just someone that likes to travel and have as many days off to go explore these mountains as I can. And so when I do that, you're like, that's your traumas, and sometimes that's a lap chole, and sometimes that is a big car accident or something from the ICU. And if we're not having cases, it can be really slow. So like I slept last night from, 10 p.m. till 5:30. And then we had a crazy case in the ICU. And as we're up there, they suddenly said, hey, we actually want you guys to do this bedside. And now we're doing a case bedside. And then you're, like, you never know what's going to happen. And Saturday night, I did nothing. I got a full night of sleep. I had a free Sunday. And it's just really up and down because the trauma volume on the weekends is that way. So you can kind of choose whatever you want. And I have said before, I thought this made this such a great place to come as a new grad, because you could do all of those things. It was all the things I was used to from the big academic centers. It was everything I'd learned in school. But now just in a much smaller setting. There just is not as many people out here.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's just awesome how like the like variety of cases that you've gotten to see. I think that in and of itself is like exactly what people hope for right out of school, is like, let me see as much as possible, like throw me into the deep end, let me, get great really fast. And so that is awesome. Amanda, what did it look like for you? Just, yeah, talk to us about the types of cases and yeah, what's the collaboration look like?
Sure. Types of cases, I think I touched on this a little bit ago. We definitely have vascular, like she mentioned, like EP. I mean, there's endo, and in our facility, we are quite a large facility, close to 1,000-bed hospital. So our endo is, these people are super sick. So you get pretty good most of the time, like at titrating your anesthetic, and figuring out now their EF's like 15%. So you definitely have a lot of really sick patients, especially as a new grad. That was one of the things that I really looked for, is like, I want to be as like competent as possible, and feel comfortable and confident in as I'm learning as a new grad. And of course, you're coming out of clinical, you get like 3,000 hours at our program. So, I mean, we had lots and lots of experience, but still, now it's you're the CRNA, and it's, your doc comes in sometimes. You'll usually see them like in passing or whatever, but they'll come in for certain things, certain parts, usually just for induction. Make sure, and some of them are super hands off. I keep my drugs right here, my airways right here. And I usually am just like, yep, you just stand there and I'll let you know if I need you. And some of them are a little more hands on, but I go with the flow. It's totally fine. Collaboration, again, you just kind of talk when you have something important, pertinent to the patient in the case. But there is some autonomy for sure. We do not do OB at our facility. There is a totally different OB team. So the docs actually do the epidurals and the spinals, which I know has been a bit frustrating for some CRNAs that really want to keep those skills. So it's been kind of tough. And also, we don't do our own TEEs and central lines at our facility. And that, in spinals and things, I would love to do more of that and some regional. So that was a little bit of a deterrent, but there's not a lot of facilities in our area that do have that for the CRNA, unless you go somewhere kind of smaller and a little more independent. As far as yeah, like all the different kinds of cases, I think I touched on that. Peds, some outpatient, like day centers that I float to, that's across the hospital, which I love, like the fast flow. It's nice to sit in like a 4 or 5 hour robot case sometimes and, just have 1 or 2 patients a day, but I also like having 8 to 10 cases a day and kind of having that fast, quick turnover. Support that I received as a new grad. So I just graduated. Took a little bit of time off after boards and started towards the end of the year. And I got about 2-ish weeks of orientation because I was already there. I think, like Colleen had mentioned, I was able to finish out about 8 weeks of my clinical as part of like, hey, this is just learning like the nuances, like the paging system, the apps that we use to communicate. We use a thing called Volt. Just learning things like that and starting some of the HR side of paperwork and everything. So for orientation, it was just making sure that I felt comfortable and like learning everyone and them learning me. So you can have a longer orientation, obviously, if you needed one. But I definitely felt very supported. And like the other day, I did a case that I had not done since I was a student. It was a laser lead extraction, and we do those at 5 a.m. So I took the 5 to 1 shift for my 8-hour shift because I do a mix of 12s and 8s. And I reached out to a CRNA the night before. I was like, hey, these are my notes on this. Can you send me your notes so I don't forget anything? So I mean, there's always support. And I was like, sorry, I had to bother you. And she was like, absolutely not. She was like, you'll teach me something next week. And I'm like, I'll try. But anyways,
I love that attitude.
yeah, I love where I work. I feel like I made a great decision for sure.
I mean, yeah, you can just tell even in the way you describe it for sure. Well, last but not least, can really talk to us about, you are obviously in a specialized, facility. So what does that look like? What cases are you seeing? And then, what support have you received, especially as a new grad coming in?
So, the support I received when I was coming in was actually really, really nice. They actually set you up with a mentor. And they try and pair you up as often as possible with the mentor. So first you start like texting them, then when you start actually going to work again and everything, try to pair you up as much as possible. But what I really liked about Sloan in terms of their support with us, they gave us a whole new orientation tip sheet, and they kind of specialized it by every single specialty surgery. So you kind of knew what the surgeons liked, what to set up for the case. Because a lot of these cases some of them I've never done before. So it was just kind of nice to know what to expect in every single room. And during your orientation time, they make sure you float through every single specialty before you're officially on your own, which I also really appreciated that. Um, and then it's kind of very similar to what everyone else is saying in terms of my autonomy. The only thing that we don't do at Sloan is OB. For me, that was not a priority for me because that was something that I didn't really love too much as an SRNA. But if that's important to you, that's something definitely important to consider. But that is like the one specialty that we don't really do. And we also don't do open hearts. But other than that, we do everything else. Um, and we have a multitude of like different shifts. You find out where you're assigned the day beforehand. When you're a new grad, you typically work a 10-hour shift 4 days a week. So you'll typically work 7 to 5. And it's really just to kind of get used to the flow of the system. Our hospital is huge. I think we have like 28 different ORs. We have 4 endo rooms. Yeah, it's huge, and there's a lot of different specialties. So I think they just want to make sure that you feel comfortable doing such big cases. Um, and then eventually there's 13-hour shifts. And then what I found important was your schedule. There's no weekends or call when you work at Sloan's or holidays. Um, but there are other shifts. You can sign up to do call. So there's a call team that you volunteer to do at nighttime and on the weekends. I'm actually part of the call team where I do like a 3 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. So my day-to-day life's a little different. But just to kind of tell you what like a day shift like you go in, the doctors already pre-op all your patients. You can also pre-op your patients as well. You could discuss with the anesthesiologist a little bit if there's anything unique about this patient, what to consider before induction. If they have like a difficult airway, we like to discuss that. And then we are completely autonomous when we are inducing. We push all our own meds. The docs are kind of just there, you're having a nice conversation with them. And then you go ahead, you put in the A line. They'll help out with IVs. Sometimes they could help out with positioning, but they really allow you to have your full autonomy. And you kind of just work together as a team. They come in, make sure you don't need a break. You're not stranded in the room completely by yourself, which is really nice. I also think you typically always get a breakfast break, then you get a 45-minute lunch break, which I found really nice too. And you're doing all these cases. You really have your full autonomy at Sloan, which I really, really like as well. Um, yeah. And then the call team is just a little bit different. So they have like all these added on emergencies, and sometimes there's nothing like another CRNA was saying. You'll get lucky and there'll be no emergencies overnight. But sometimes there are a bunch of emergencies where it's like an IR case and a lot of bleeding. So there's a lot, and I've realized how much growth I've seen because the patient population here at Sloan is also very, very sick. Their cancer a lot of times metastasized through so many different organs. So
Yeah.
it's just and you also what I love about Sloan is the patient population. They're so appreciative of everything that you're doing for them. They are just the nicest patients, and I think everything that they're going through, it's just so special to be with them throughout this part of their life. And Sloan really, and the patients always say, like, I've had the best experiences at Sloan. Like, you guys had made me feel so comfortable being here. So it's just overall, you know that you're making an impact on such a difficult time during someone's life. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's so much the reason so many of you entered the field, and to hear it, play out once you finished all the schooling and actually got to kick it off. I'm sure just, is really special. Wow. Well, look, I mean, before we wrap, I'd love to have, our recruiters actually really talk about what makes each of these locations really special, and not only just locations like the people, the place, you know, what makes it a long-term home. And so, Sade, we're going to start with you. So we, you know, just wrapped with Kimberly. Like, you know, why choose MSK? Like, what in your mind makes it so unique and so special relative to other healthcare systems that students may be thinking and choosing between?
Yeah, I actually covered this at the beginning, but I mean, I can't say this enough. I was at a career fair last week for nursing students. I met with over 90 students. It was very busy. And I can tell you that about 99%, if not all of those students came to me saying, I really want to be a part of the mission of MSK. I've heard about what you do. I had a family member who visited MSK. They were treated so well. Or I had a grandma, I was very young, but the experience was just so memorable and I really want to give back. So I would say again that, you know, we all know somebody who's been affected by cancer. It's very mission driven, it's very collaborative. You're never alone. Your ideas are always welcome. If I always tell my colleagues that sometimes I'm scared of telling my boss about ideas because she will make sure that you have an opportunity to carry it out, you know. So everyone is really supportive of one another. You know, we also offer a work-life balance for our employees, and it's a great location. New York City, there's a lot going on there, a lot of things to do. We may not have skiing nearby in the city, but there are other things that makes New York City exciting. You know, so yeah, that's it.
I love it. All right, Colleen, right to you. Talk to us as far as, you know, as we think about the why Novant, and, you know, all the support that you built in, especially for new grads. What do you think really makes Novant stand out?
Absolutely. I feel like I could have taken up this whole call giving all the reasons. But just kind of some high level things is really the remarkable care that we provide patients. It's such a big standout for our mission and our values, but also with with our team members as well. As Amanda said, the culture is just unmatched here at Novant and the family environment. We do want to provide that work-life balance, and we understand everyone brings different background and experience that just really makes the team whole. But really want to be able to provide the variety of schedules that work for everybody and what you're looking for in cases that you want to work and why you got into nursing and why you want to become a CRNA and really celebrate those with the team, because without, you know, each of our CRNAs, we wouldn't have the amazing team that we have and the patients wouldn't have the amazing experience. And that's really prominent in the hospitals. When you go in there, everyone can feel that everyone, you know, wants to be there and wants to help patients recover well and wants the team to be supported as well. We have a strong leadership team. I think some of our market leaders know every single, you know, CRNA that walks through the door, and they know how to reach them at any time, and just they're always there for that support as well, which is really just makes the whole experience stand out. You know, you want a career, but you want to love what you do every day as well.
So well said. Thank you, Colleen. And then Mike, we'd love to get it firsthand. Obviously, you know, St. Alphonsus is, you know, is in such a unique market and clearly gives a lot of autonomy. Like, why St. Alphonsus? Why Idaho? And, you know, why this team? Because that's definitely the recurring piece that we hear from your team members is just, you know, the culture is especially unique. Yeah.
Absolutely. Having grown up about 15 minutes outside Manhattan, moved to Florida, right? Moving from the tri-state area of Florida, it's just got to do it at least once in your life. But yeah, no, moving out here, really, yes, it was the culture that drew me, right? As a SRNA coming here, right, growing team, really intentional about building the culture within the team, mission driven, etc. Of course, right? I think, you know, meeting the team, you'll really feel that right away. But in terms of opportunity just for that work-life balance, right? What are you doing outside of work, right? Work to live to work kind of thing. You know, we have call schedules, no call schedules, OB with call, no call, right? So I mean, any way you want to practice, that's great. So your day to day, let's, you know, leave that to the side. Emily really harped on the outdoors. Sure, skiing, the mountains, hiking. I mean, it's unparalleled. It's really gorgeous. I'm not that outdoorsy, to be honest. I really like the art scene. There's a really big stand-up scene in comedy, right? It's just kind of odd that Boise really pops. anyway, art, live music, it's really interesting that way. It's the fifth largest or the fifth fastest growing city in the country as of 2023. So it's a great little city, and you know it's about 250,000 within the city limits, and about shade under 1 million in the metro area. And growing exponentially. So what's great there, we're rebuilding the team. We have a lot of openings for CRNAs. So if you're nervous to move here by yourself, bring a friend. We'll gladly talk to everybody. So thank you.
I love it. I think many of us are going to book a fun trip over at some point soon.
Absolutely.
Look, truly, I know we're at time, but I want to say more than anything, thank you to each of our panelists. I know we had a ton of students pinging us, asking us to share this information with them, and there's no better way for them to learn about each of your cultures than to hear it firsthand from each of you. So again, for the students who had submitted questions into the chat, if you are an SRNA and you want to graduate with truly like a clear financial plan for your loans, and by that financial plan, we mean a lot less stress from them, then make sure that you go to class.com/CRNA so that you can look at these incredible opportunities with MSK, Novant, and St. Al's. But again, more than anything, I just want to say, thank you for joining. And thank you to each of these healthcare systems for really stepping in a moment in time where so many students are looking for employers that care in the right way. And so with that, we can wrap the webinar. Thank you. Great.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah, bye. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye.